Hi all! In today's video, I'll be teaching you how to rebuild a carburetor on an Echo trimmer. Now this trimmer is an Echo SRM-210, but this will also apply to other Echo trimmers such as the SRM-225, which is the orange one back there. That one is already running. This one is currently not running. This is the one I'm going to rebuild the carburetor on today. If you follow this video step by step, you should be in pretty good shape in order to get your carburetor rebuilt correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. The first thing you're going to want to do is come to your trimmer and look for this box right here. It'll look similar to this. It may have an orange knob on it instead, but come to this side of the trimmer and unscrew either that knob or the little wing nut that's on top of this cover here. And then pull this cover off. Inside the cover will be an air filter. This air filter is beat up beyond repair, so I'm going to throw that away, but this is not part of the repair. Just put that air filter to the side. And on this trimmer, there are two Phillips head screws here beyond that hold the carburetor in place. On your trimmer, it may be T27 Torx. But on this one, it's a Phillips head screwdriver, so I'm going to go ahead and take these screws out. Okay, once those screws are out, what you're going to want to do is you hold the carburetor right here and pull out on this assembly here and put this to the side. Now you have access to your carburetor. Currently, this carburetor is stuck to the end of the trimmer because it's been on there for so long. Yours should probably just fall down like this. It will still be held in place by this right here, as well as the fuel lines. After your carburetor has come off, you're going to want to have to take the linkage off. This is a set screw, so what you're going to want to do is take something like a Sharpie and mark it right where the threads stop, right there. And then use a 5/16 wrench and unscrew this counterclockwise all the way until it comes out. Now some of your linkages may look like this one right here, where in this case you're going to want to remove this nut right here. If you have this style of linkage, you're going to want to use a 3/8 wrench and take this bolt off right here. And then the linkage slides out. However, if you have the other type of linkage, use your 5/16 wrench and start unthreading this bolt right here until it's all the way out. Once it has come out like this, you are going to want to then go ahead and remove your throttle linkage. There's a few ways you can do this. The way I like to do it is I like to, pull your linkage back, hold your throttle, and then I like to take a flathead screwdriver, put it in this little slit right there, and turn it this way until it is past this little black mark here. Once it's past that black mark, go ahead and push back in, and your cable end will pop out, and then lift your cable up with your flathead screwdriver, and your cable will come out. Release your throttle, I guess that works, and then pull it out like that, so it separates your carburetor and your throttle. Next, you are going to have your fuel lines at the very bottom. Now, if you're a person that does not remember which fuel line goes where, go ahead and mark your Sharpie and the carburetor right where one of the fuel lines goes. And then you're going to want to go ahead and take your fuel lines off, twist, and they should come off. They may be a little bit tough, but if you twist and pull, they should come off like so. And there your carburetor is off. Now separate your carburetor from your machine and find a nice open space to work in order to access your carburetor. I forgot to note that there will be a gasket here. You can take this off. It may or may not come off with the carburetor. If it won't come off, just leave it on, set that aside. And then after that, you should have primed out the fuel in your carburetor first. There you go, getting all the fuel out of the carburetor so it's easier to work on. From here we will start taking apart our carburetor. The first side we're going to take off is this side right here with the primer bulb. So there is 4 screws right here, okay? You're going to want to go ahead and remove all 4 of these screws. And set them aside. After that, this assembly will come off here, this metal piece. Set that aside. Your primer bulb will come off, set that aside too. And then from here, you will have this primer base cover right here, okay? So what you can go ahead and do is just wipe the excess gas off of there just to clean it up a little bit and make it easier to work on. After this, there is a screw placed inside of that primer base cap. You're going to want to go ahead and remove this. This is a long screw. This may take a while to remove. But just note, just try to hold the primer base down because there are diaphragms under here. Now this screw you're going to want to keep separate from all the other screws. That is a special screw. Do not mix that up, okay? From here, you're going to want to go ahead, be careful, slowly remove this primer base like that. And then from here, you will have either laying there or on here a diaphragm and a gasket that you can go ahead and separate. Here's your diaphragm and gasket. Don't separate the diaphragm and the gasket. Keep those together just for reference, okay? Go ahead and set that aside. You can go ahead and wipe down your primer base here and wipe down this side of the carburetor. And then from here, you are going to want to take a small pick or screwdriver. I'm going to use this pick right here. There's a small screen right there. That is a metal screen. You're going to want to go ahead and pick it out very carefully. It may take a while. If you break it, that's okay. I'm just going to poke a hole straight through mine and break it so that I can get it out, because this screen is stuck in there and it will need replacing anyway. And there's your screen. This will get clogged with fuel and make your engine not run right. Go ahead and put that aside. From here, you can take your paper towel, just wipe it down, and then now we'll rotate the carburetor like this to this cover here. There will be 2 screws holding this in. You're going to want to go ahead and take this off. These are short screws, so be careful. Go ahead and set these aside, separate from the rest. And then your other screw here. Again, a short screw. Go ahead and set that aside. And then this cover here should come right off. It may be stiff. There you go. And when this cover comes off, you will either have a diaphragm and a gasket on here, or it will be stuck to here. You're going to want to go ahead and take these off. Leave them stuck together. Make sure you don't separate the diaphragm and the gasket. Alright? And then go ahead and inspect your diaphragm. What you're going to want to do is, well, dry it off first. It's a little moist with fuel. Look at your this diaphragm very closely. This is called a metering diaphragm, okay? Look at this diaphragm on this side here and look to see if there's any cracks, creases, breaks, or whatever you want to call these. Little creases, little permanent creases in the diaphragm that are definitely noticeable, okay? And then flip it over to the other side. Is the diaphragm hard? Is this metal piece intact? Is the piece around still moving freely? Make sure your diaphragm moves freely. And when you move your diaphragm, make sure it does not click in any way. If you move your diaphragm like this, it should be silent. You should not hear a little bit of clicking, nothing. If you hear anything, your diaphragm needs to be replaced. If you heard anything that I said not true about your diaphragm, it needs to be replaced. I'm not sure if you can hear this. Listen. That's the clicking on my diaphragm. I'm not sure if you could hear it, but this one needs to be replaced. Even though it still may seem flexible, the smallest amount of imperfections in your diaphragm will restrict fuel flow. From here, I'm going to go ahead and wipe away the excess gas here. And then from here, this is your metering lever right here that pushes up and down. So from here, you're going to want to go ahead and take this screw out. It may be stiff. After you loosen this screw, go ahead and put your finger on this lever right here, okay? And then take this screw out. Set this aside. This is a different screw from the rest. Make sure you remember which screw this is. And then what you're going to do is flip it upside down and let go. And everything should come out. What you should have come out is a spring. You should have this little needle coming out, this pin, and this little lever. Now sometimes your needle goes right in there. It will be stuck and it won't come out. What you're going to want to do is take a pick or a screwdriver or your finger and just go ahead in there and just pry that diaphragm out. I could usually do it with my finger. Not the diaphragm, the needle. Right there. You see I pry it out? There we go. Set that aside. And actually, you know what? Inspect it first. Look at your needle. It'll either be black or gray. If you see that there's any color imperfections, if there is a gray line around the tip anywhere, if there is a red line around the tip, if it is all red, it needs replacing. This is not the needle that came out of this carburetor, but this is a needle that came out of another carburetor. Do you see how it is all red and there's hardly any gray left? This would be an indication that your needle is very bad and needs to be replaced. But this needle here, it entirely does look okay, and I probably could reuse this. I probably could use it, but I'm going to replace it anyway just for the video. Same with this lever here. This lever almost never goes bad unless it gets bent. I'm going to replace it anyway. Same with the pin and the spring. They should never go bad unless they're tampered with. Go ahead and wipe this down. And then from here, you're going to want to go through all your holes in your carburetor and make sure everything's clear. I'll show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this small wire here. This wire, I believe it came from a twisty tie on a loaf of bread on the plastic. Any small wire will work. Maybe a small guitar string, like an E guitar string. What you're going to want to do is go ahead and stick this wire down. You see this hole right there where the needle normally goes? Go ahead and stick it down there and make sure, try to get it down there as far as you can. And work it back and forth. Once that's done, go right next to it in this little hole right there and put your wire down there as far as you can. You may not get it very far down there. Work it back and forth. Okay? And then from here, don't do this one. This is just a thread. This one is also just an example point. You don't need to do this. So is this one. Move over here. Put your wire down this hole right here. Make sure that's clear. Go down this hole here. Make sure that's clear. Make sure that's clear. Make sure that's clear. That's clear. That's clear. That's clear. That's clear. Did I do this one already? This is your priming hole. One of these is your priming hole. I think it's this one. Make sure that Push it all the way down there as far as you can. Make sure that's clear. And now we move to the primer base, okay? So on the primer base, there is these two little dots right here. They may be on your carburetor depending what model you have. Do not, I repeat, do not, I can't stress it enough, do not put your wire through these. Do not put your wire through these. Please don't put your wire through these. If you put your wire through these, right there, there's a little rubber flap in there, and it acts as a check valve. It is a non-serviceable part. If you put your wire in here, you will puncture that check valve, or if not, damage it. And once that check valve is damaged, your carburetor is junk. So do not put your wire in this or that, okay? So you can go ahead and make sure everything else is clear, but please don't put your wire in there. And there's a little hole right here, come on, right there, there may be one, yeah, there's one right there, there's one there, and then from here you can go ahead and stick it down the fuel ports. Don't go crazy because these will eventually lead into the check valves. Only put a little bit into there just to make sure that it's all clear. And then from here, this is not required, but this is very recommended. From here, if you have any, take some carburetor cleaner, carb and choke cleaner, or brake parts cleaner, whichever one you have. Go ahead and gently spray it down all the holes that we just covered with our wire. Now on this, you can gently spray into these check valves, gently. And then once done with that, go ahead, take a paper towel, lightly dab off the parts here. And then this is an extra bonus. After you sprayed your carburetor down with your carburetor cleaner, if you have an air compressor with a pistol grip or something that can just blow air out of it, go ahead to all of the holes in your carburetor and light pressure, spray them out. Just to get excess holes. Excess pressure may damage something if it doesn't check out. Actually, you know this. You should not go through this. It's just and do not spray the air compressor on these check valves. That is going to hurt the check valves. And an even extra bonus, if you're really ambitious, if and only if you have an ultrasonic cleaner, you can go ahead and put your carburetor parts in the ultrasonic cleaner for a bath. If you do not have an ultrasonic cleaner, this is okay. Only put your carburetor, the covers, and the primer base in the ultrasonic. Do not put anything else in the ultrasonic. Go ahead and set it for a half an hour on 50-degree heat, and you're good to go. Alright, we're all done here. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe our stuff off here. It should have turned out really nice. Yeah, you see how shiny that is? Pretty shiny. The ultrasonic is also good if you found out that you have a stuck check valve. If you found out you have a stuck check valve, like one of these, if it's stuck open or stuck shut, well, here's this. If your carburetor is not priming, you have a stuck check valve. If you have a stuck check valve, the ultrasonic is good at unsticking those check valves. I can't think of any other way to unstick check valves besides the ultrasonic cleaner. Nonetheless, our carburetor came out pretty good. So I'm going to put this basket aside. Make sure, if you do put it in the ultrasonic, make sure your butterfly or your cube in there moves freely, because sometimes they're stiff. Mine seems to be okay. And now we are going to rebuild this carburetor with a Carburetor Rebuild kit. This carburetor takes the rebuild kit right here. This is a Zama RB-188. RB-188 carburetor kit. Ignore that China part. They're good parts. Seriously, they're good parts. So, these are the new parts I'm going to use for my carburetor. I'm going to go ahead and, well, if you want to rebuild your carburetor, it's an RB-188. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And dump out my parts into a new pile. Make sure you get everything out of the bag. Alright, everything is out of the bag. Let's see what we have here. We have our screen, our new needle, our new valve, or pin, our new lever, our new spring. I believe that this is a seat right here. You should not be needing that because seats should not have to be replaced because they're metal. In this carburetor, they're metal. So put that aside. I'm not screwing with that. You need these. And then here you have your metering diaphragm gasket, your new metering diaphragm. Now this metering diaphragm is very important. This metering diaphragm is like a gray, while the aftermarket ones are black. So if you rebuild your carburetor, make sure to get an OEM carburetor kit. If you get an aftermarket kit, they will often not last you a long time. They will often break very quickly. So, you also have your fuel pump diaphragm and your fuel pump gasket. So I'm going to start with rebuilding this side here, because that's what I started with taking apart. I'm going to start with the screen, which goes right here. You just want to place it on top, about centered, just like that. It has to be about center, right? And then I like to take something, either a drill bit that fits in there, snug, or that fits in there with a good size, or like a Torx driver like this one, and push the screen down into the, like that, into the carburetor, and take it out, and then look in there and make sure that the screen is covering everything. If it's not covering everything, take it back out and do it again. Nonetheless, do you remember this gasket here and diaphragm that I told you not to take apart? Well, that's what we're going to use to reference for this one here. So it looks like this gasket went like this, okay? And then this diaphragm went with it like this. Just like that. Going to have to match those up, right? There you go. And then make sure that the diaphragm here goes first and the gasket's facing you. So the gasket's facing up to the sky and the diaphragm is on the carburetor. This is actually a fuel pump right here. So I'm going to go ahead and place it on there. There we go. And then take our primer base. Put the fuel inlets facing down at the bottom of the carburetor so that this little brass thing and this are aligned. Make sure you don't force anything. Don't push on the diaphragm and ruin it. There you go. It just fit right into place there. And then I'm going to take my one special screw that went in the top here. Remember that special screw? Put that in the top and screw it back down. It should go into the diaphragm. It should go inside like that. If it does not, then you have the wrong screw. Tighten it down hand tight. Don't go like lug nut tight. Just go, you know, just make it snug. You want it to seal the gasket, but you don't want to strip the screw or break the plastic. And now we'll do the other side, because that side is complete. Now for this side, we have to put our needle valve, pin, spring, and lever in. So what you want to do is you want to put everything together like this, okay? So your lever here, hold it right here by the edges, put your pin in like that, with a not centered but a little bit off to the right, and then put your needle in there and rest it there. And then what you have to do is take your spring, this is a hard process, and put it in this hole right there and just rest it there like that. Now this can be a hard process because I've already lost all of my parts that were being held together with that metering lever. I'm going to set this carburetor aside so that spring stays, and I'm going to go ahead and put everything back in like this. Oh, there you go. Make sure you're using your new needle. Go ahead and grab this back. Now, this needle, you see that hole right there? That hole, now wait, right there, the one that goes in there, your needle has to go inside that hole, like this. Once it goes in there, you're going to want to push down with your finger and make sure to get everything in there correctly. Now, I've already messed up, so I'm going to redo this again. There you go. You see how long that took me to do right there. Don't stress yourself if you cannot put this in right away. This takes a lot of people, a lot of time, and a lot of practice. Now what you're going to want to do is put your finger right over this section here. Do not push hard. Don't push hard. Just make sure nothing falls out. Okay? If you push hard, this gauge will bend and your carburetor will be junk. If you bend this, just use the old lever. Then you're going to take your special screw here that goes into here. It kind of has a taper on the one end. It's a short screw. And you're going to want to go ahead and put it right in the side here. Right there. And tighten it. Let go. You can tighten it. And once that screw is in there, you can let go. And then what you want to do is just make sure that it goes up and down. Now I'm going to show you how to level it with the gauge if you have a gauge. So this is the gauge for that lever here. This carburetor is an RB, so look for RB on this gauge, which is right there. And I'm going to go ahead, you have to rub it against the top of here. Make sure that it's barely, just barely touching. Now on this one, mine is not even close to touching. So I'm going to have to raise that lever up. Just bend it up with my finger. And see, now it's way too high. So I have to bring it back down, bend it back down, and then check it. Bend it down. Now you see how it's barely, just barely touching right there? Just barely touching. That's what you want. And then from here, you'll take your diaphragm gasket, put it on, and then your diaphragm. So the gasket goes first on this one, okay? Once you've done that, go ahead and put your cover back on. See, there's a little hole right there, okay? There's a little peg here and a little hole there. Put the hole through the peg, twist it, and align everything. And there you go. That's how you put that back on. And then take your two little screws, the little ones, not the big ones, and then just go ahead and screw those back in. Again, make them tight, but don't strip the screws. There you go. That side is done. Once you have put that side of the carburetor back on and screwed those down good, from here you can either use your old primer bulb. If it's discolored and not very clear anymore, or if it's hard, cracked, or damaged, do not use it. This one is discolored and it feels and looks like it's going to break any minute, okay? So this one is garbage. If your primer bulb does not look good, you can buy a new one on Amazon. Just search for Zama primer bulb and you can get like one, maybe two or three for $5. Aftermarket shouldn't matter. These guys, you don't matter if it does not matter if they're aftermarket. So put your primer bulb, just rest it on this front cover here, right? Make sure it's seated correctly. Make sure it's not moving, and then take this cover here, and you see how there's a little bit of a bend there. You want to make that bend face up. You see, in that orientation, you want it like that, not like that. You got to put it like that. All right? And go ahead and put that on, putting this down towards the fuel lines. Press it on there, and then take your 4 screws, the long screws. They should be the only 4 screws you have left. If you have more than 5 screws, you have extra pieces, you didn't do it right. If you have less than 4 screws, you lost something. So again, this is holding your primer bulb on, so these shouldn't be oh, there goes my screwdriver. These shouldn't be ridiculously tight. You just want these to be tight enough that it holds the primer bulb on and seals it. All right, and then from here, push the primer bulb and see if you hear a squeak. If you don't hear a squeak, that's okay. The next thing you want to do is put your finger, so there's 2 fuel lines right here, right? One of these has like a bunch of little fittings on it that's bigger. You see there's 2 holes there? One of them's bigger, one of them's smaller. Put one of your fingers over the bigger one, pump the primer bulb, and see if the primer bulb starts to get harder to pump. As you pump it, it'll come up slower. And then when you let go, it'll hiss on you a little bit. That means your primer bulb and your carburetor have successfully been rebuilt. So believe it or not, this carburetor is all back together. We're going to go put it back on now. Okay, I am back at the machine here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my carburetor back on. So the first thing I'm going to do, you know what? This little sleeve here, the first thing I'm going to do is reinstall the sleeve because it fell off. If you have an SRM-210, just make sure that sleeve doesn't fall off. You're going to want to go ahead and put that back on. After I put that little sleeve back on, I'm going to want to go ahead and put my fuel lines back on. If you want to watch me put these fuel lines on, watch this video right there. Click right there, because these are new fuel lines and I just put them on. And if you want to see how I did it, click up in the right hand corner. So I've talked about this in that video, but the black fuel line goes on the bigger hole and the color fuel line goes on the smaller hole. The bigger hole is your fuel intake. That should lead to your fuel filter. And the color line is just your outlet. That's for your primer bulb to exit fuel out of. Once those fuel lines are on, then go ahead and take this cover here and put your carburetor right on it with those 2 bolts there. Make sure that this side here is facing your cover here, not this side. This side goes to your engine. So go ahead and put this on. There you go. And then remember that one green gasket? I think it was green, wherever the heck it went. Here it is, that gasket. Put that gasket on here, just like this. It should go next to, you see this little groove in the carburetor? This end of the gasket should face that. So there you go. And then you should have it look like this. And then when you go to put it back, put the 2 holes into your 2 outlets on the carburetor, and then take your flathead screwdriver and tighten those screws down, just loosely for now. And then once you've tightened those screws down loosely, you can go ahead and crank them down. Again, they're holding a gasket on, they're holding the carburetor on. Not super tight. Don't break the bolts though. There you go. And then from here, you're going to want to go ahead and put this cable back on here. So you can go ahead and thread it through like this. Screw this in first with my 5/16. Right to where my Sharpie mark was. Remember the Sharpie mark? And after you do that, maybe we can put this cable back in now. So move your butterfly back, and then just kind of push your cable in with a screwdriver into this little flat spot here, like this. And there you go, it just kind of slid into place. And then what you want to do is take this cable and push it back into there. Maybe turn the top with a screwdriver and push it in with your finger. You have to kind of get past that little mark there. The black, whatever it's called. There you go. Got that cable in there. Let go of the butterfly. And then pull your trigger and just test to see if it moves freely. If it moves freely, you're in good shape. Now, you notice that mine isn't going back all the way. You see how when I pull the trigger, I can move this back more? That means I have to loosen this adjustment here because it's not going to full throttle. Now, if yours is already going to full throttle and the trigger is not all the way pulled, that means you need to tighten this. All right, that is perfect. You see, when I pull the trigger all the way, it does go to full throttle. But if I only pull the trigger a little bit, it doesn't go to full throttle. That's exactly what I want. And then from there, I'm going to wipe away this junk here because this is, you know, old machine. Remember that dirty air filter that I was originally using? Right here, I'm going to replace this. This is not required to rebuild your carburetor. Your air filter should be a lot cleaner than mine. But if you want to buy a new air filter, I'll put the part number in the description. Here's your new air filter. You want to go ahead and put it in with the lines facing up and down. And go ahead and just place it in there. Make sure that all sides seat correctly. And make sure that it's fitting in there good. There. The air filter goes in like that. Make sure it's in on all sides, which mine is not. I'm going to put it left and right. Either way, there we go. You see how my air filter is in on all sides now? Then I'm going to go ahead and take my air filter cover right here. So you see that there's little kind of grooves on the bottom there. That faces down and goes on just like this. Make sure your wing nut goes in the center hole right there of your air filter. And then go ahead and tighten the wing nut down. Again, make it snug. No more past snug. And then from there, go ahead and put some gas in and try it out. I'm going to go ahead and put some gas in here. This is 40-to-1 gas, non-ethanol. Echoes take 50-to-1, but I like to put 40-to-1 in just to be safe. It's up to you. You want to put a fair amount of gas in here because too little gas will make it not run correctly. I forgot to put my gas cap back in. There we go. Screw that back down. And then from here, you're going to want to come to this side and to your primer bulb. Go ahead and push your primer bulb in and out a few times until you start to see fuel coming in your primer bulb. Push it slowly. Don't force this. Now, do you see that there is fuel in my primer bulb? If your primer bulb is not full of fuel, then there's something wrong with your carburetor. Go ahead and give that a good amount of primes just to get the whole carburetor, all the diaphragms moving, wet, and used to the new carburetor. That's what I like to do. There we go. If your carburetor primes up, then you can go out and try to start it, which is what I'm going to do now. All right, wish me luck. Turn your switch on. Prime. Choke. And there you go. Your carburetor is rebuilt, and now this machine is running for the first time in I don't know how long. Rebuilding a carburetor can do a lot to getting a machine to run. Now, I'm not sure if you noticed, but my machine is running a little bit kind of funny because it's running, the idle kind of sounds like a little bit too low. It's idling a little bit too low, and I want to kind of fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around here to the carburetor, and this screw right here, I'm going to turn this in this way, right, while the machine is running to adjust the idle. I'm going to do that now. And there you go. You see, I only turned it in a half a turn, and now it's running. Much better. There you have it. How to rebuild a carburetor on an Echo trimmer is that simple. And rebuilding a carburetor can sometimes be all it takes to get a non-running machine running again. That is 85 to 90% of the time I get a trimmer in that's broken, I rebuild the carburetor and it fixes it. If your trimmer doesn't run, consider rebuilding the carburetor. And if you want to diagnose what's wrong with your trimmer, click up here to one of my other videos to check it out. Nonetheless, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time and wish this trimmer good luck in the future.